Hi, I'm James from Borussia Dortmund English, and this is the Echte Liebe podcast. We are just days away from the first competitive game of the new season. It only feels like yesterday that we all had to live through our worst nightmare against Mainz, and now we are ready to do it all over again. But this time, let's hope we have a different ending. Going into this off-season was always going to be a huge battle for everyone involved with the club. There was the element of disbelief, shock, even anger and pessimism after the way last season ended, and on top of that, we all knew that our best player and biggest asset, Jude Bellingham, was departing for Real Madrid. There weren't many, if any, positives that we could take from the situation. I'm personally very supportive of the club through the good times and the bad, but even I was struggling to see how we could navigate our way out of what seemed like a catalyst for even more disappointment. As we know, one way of patching things over in football is to make a statement in the transfer market. Who doesn't get excited by big signings and well-known proven names joining their club? It can take the attention away from the obvious and glaring issues, but that isn't the Borussia Dortmund way. It never has been, and this summer has been no different. It's something that, as BVB fans, we've had to get used to. Seeing players being sold for hundreds of millions whilst we handpick unproven talent that we can develop into the next big thing. Ultimately, it's a business model that from a financial point of view has worked, but it's the lack of success on the pitch that many of our fans have become increasingly disgruntled with. So, with that being said, what's there to say about the upcoming season, and will it deliver an outcome any different to the last 10? Well, this is football, which means that the only thing we can be sure about is that nothing is for sure. We've broken down the additions to the squad on previous episodes, but now we've had a chance to see them in action during pre-season, and if what we've witnessed so far is anything to go by, then I feel that we may see a more complete and rounded squad of players moving forward. Of course, we do have to remember that it was just pre-season. It's never a true indicator of what lies ahead, but we've had some very tough and competitive games, and each time we've overcame what was in front of us. Our first 3 games of pre-season were against German lower league opposition. We opened up our campaign with a comprehensive 7-0 win over Westphalia Rheinern. The next 2 games saw narrow and hard-fought wins against Regionalliga sides Rot-Weiss Oberhausen and Rot-Weiss Erfurt. There were a few question marks over those performances, but believe me when I say this, the 4th tier of German football is both exciting and highly competitive. When we take into account that they were further in their pre-season preparations than ourselves, and that we weren't fielding our strongest side, it really will end up being a valuable experience for our upcoming game against Schott Mainz in the DFB Pokal. Overall, we were 3 games in, we'd won all 3 while scoring 12 goals and conceding only 3. So far, so good. Up next was our tour of the US. Now we know that this was just as much about branding and exposure as it was about the games, but it still proved to be a good indicator as to where we are when facing much stronger opposition. We opened our account with a 6-0 win over San Diego Loyal, but if you watch the game, you'd know that it wasn't as plain sailing as the result suggests. The USL Championship side could easily have scored 2 or 3 goals against a strong BVB side if they'd taken their chances. But after flying out to the US and having to adjust to a different time zone, we'll give the boys some leeway. It was the upcoming games against Manchester United and Chelsea that everyone really wanted to see, and neither of those games disappointed. The Premier League sides were again ahead of us in their preparations for the new season as their campaigns kick off a week earlier than our opener in the Bundesliga. This also meant that they were having to keep that fine balancing act of getting everyone up to match fitness while also trying not to lose anyone due to injury, something I'll touch on very shortly regarding us. The United game was always going to be a good test. They have undoubted quality and were led by our old favourite Jadon Sancho. It's fair to say that they didn't start their strongest side, but they were still able to take the lead on the 24th minute through Diego Dalot. As we approached half-time, and almost out of nowhere, 2 goals from Daniel Malen in less than a minute saw us take a 2-1 lead into the break. Shortly after half-time, there were huge changes in personnel on both sides, which is usually the case in the second half of pre-season games. On the 52nd minute, the Brazilian Antony drew United level, and deservedly so. They had most of their first-team players on the field by the hour mark, but the game seemed more like a cup tie at this point. Both sides saw spells of attacks, and it was one of those spells that ultimately won the game for us. Just 10 minutes after coming on as a substitute, Yusufa Moukoko was teed up by Marco Reus to make it 3-2, and that's how it stayed. One Premier League giant slayed, one to go. It's no secret that after last year's Champions League exit to them, I'm not the biggest Chelsea fan. I was even less of one after Reece James's horror tackle on Bensebaini. He was very lucky to have walked away from that. It was the definition of a leg breaker, and with how our injury list is growing, we really are fortunate that it didn't come to that. It's again fair to say that Chelsea didn't have their strongest 11 out throughout any point in the game, but they still proved to be a stern test. It wasn't until the 80th minute that the deadlock was broken. A shot from outside of the area was deflected into the net by no other than Marius Wolf. We looked in control at that point. We just needed to see the game out. But again, it wasn't to be. A game of head tennis in the 89th minute in the BVB box saw the ball fall kindly for Mason Burstow, who looped his header over a stranded Alexander Meyer. It ended in a draw, and with the US tour over, our attention turned to the Ajax game at the Westfalenstadion. This game was one that I saw almost like a homecoming. A chance to be in front of our own fans and to erase those burning and heartbreaking scenes that were etched into our minds at the end of last season. This was a chance for a fresh start. The final game before the competitive season commences, and that was reflected in the team selection by Edin Terzic. If there was anything to take from this game other than the positive result, it's that we have the players to step up for those that are missing. Alexander Meyer was exceptional, making 2 crucial one-on-one saves to keep us in front. Another player that I've been a vocal supporter of is Julian Ryerson. I see him as our starting right back with Wolf as backup, and after this performance, I haven't seen anything to change my mind. There also has to be a special mention for the game changer and match winner also. This week we heard that the plan moving forward was to play both Julian Brandt and Marcel Sabitzer together, but it was Felix Nemecha who came on and changed the game. After losing the ball with his first touch, he started to gain confidence and in the 54th minute scored his first goal as a Borussia Dortmund player. The composure he showed with the first touch and feint before slotting the ball home was something we've seen before. I won't say it, but I'll let you decide what I'm hinting at with that one. A confident 3-1 win at home to Ajax in front of our own fans, and that was pre-season complete. 7 games, 6 wins, 1 draw, 25 goals scored, 7 goals conceded, and unbeaten against the likes of Manchester United, Chelsea and Ajax. What more could we ask for? Well, quite simply, is to take this form into the Pokal with a win against Schott Mainz and then into the Bundesliga opener against FC Köln. We could also ask for these recurring injury issues that seem to plague us season after season to ease. I genuinely believe that if we have a strong start and can keep the loss of key players to a minimum, we'll give ourselves a great chance of achieving something special this season. We can only hope that with the experiences that this group of players went through last season, that it will have bonded them and made them a stronger group. As professionals, there has to be that desire to put things right, to achieve and go one step further than they did before. And with the additions that we've made, I really think that we have all the pieces to make that a reality. If you have managed to get this far in the show, then I'd like to say a huge thank you. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button, and if you want to support the show, you can become a Borussia Dortmund English member via the Patreon page, and this really does make a difference. So again, thank you. I'll put all of the links below, but for now, I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. I'll be continuing the podcast throughout the season, covering all games, news, and everything BVB, and I'll see you all on the pages over the season. Take care everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Echte Liebe podcast.